Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. If you want to join us, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And top line story tonight, Judge Arthur Engeron, he has prevented Trump, barred him from operating his business in New York for 3 years, and has ordered him to pay $355 million in this fake, phony fraud civil trial. They say this was a trial for fraud on Trump. It seems like this was a trial for fraud for the judge, and he proved himself to be a fraudster. Now, I know the internet trolls who live on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else that love to hate on me, they're saying, oh, there he goes again, kissing Trump's butt. But this is really about sticking up for what's right or wrong. It's easy to love the people that are nice to you, and it's easy to dislike the people you don't like. But sometimes you just have to force yourself to be fair. It's kind of like admitting a mistake when you make one. Some people are able to do it. Some people don't have the capacity. And in real life, just because you may not like Trump, somebody may not like Trump. He might be uncouth. He might have way too big of a personality. Maybe you think he's a narcissist, whatever it is. It doesn't mean we get to change the laws to bust his balls. It doesn't work that way. It's not cool. Because the minute we do it for him, we'll do it to the next person we don't like. And the next person. Now the laws, instead of being objective, they become subjective. Subject to whether we like you or not. Subject to whether your personality fits the mold or not. Trump doesn't kill people. Trump hasn't made himself a dictator. Trump hasn't refused to leave the White House. None of these things that everybody is supposing will happen, none of them have happened. In fact, if there's anything we can presuppose, it's that he won't do it because he was already in the White House and left voluntarily, and I remember watching it. He left. He had some people with boxes behind him carrying boxes. He walked right onto Marine One. He left the White House. He went to Mar-a-Lago. Looked pretty peaceful to me. What about January 6th? What about it? We have an FBI that can't even answer questions about who was in the crowd. Oh, but they can't because operational things. They can't reveal what, their sources and methods and if they've got undercover people or not. These people are doing counterterrorism work, Rich. Don't you understand? The FBI can't just put that out there. This could compromise their operations. If you believe that, let me tell you something. I've got a bridge. I got a concrete bridge in Brooklyn. I've got a suspension bridge. It's mainly steel. It's also in Brooklyn. I've got a really, really nice bridge. Kind of goes with the wind flow. That one goes from Jersey into Staten Island. Well, I got a lot of bridges for sale. You let me know which one you want, and I'll sell it to you. Stop being so naive. Truly. Open your eyes. Pay attention. This is an erosion of our constitutional system. This is an erosion of the laws. We know it. This is an erosion of good and evil, where good prevails and evil falters. We're turning that upside down on its head, where we use evil to get the outcome we want, where we use evil to make sure we ensure the candidate we want wins. We use evil because we may not like a person for their politics or their attitude or their delivery. Listen, I don't like Joe El Baboso Biden. I don't like Barack Obama. There's a lot of people I didn't like and don't like now. But I would never sit here and cheat to keep them out, and I would never sit here and change any laws to prevent them from serving. If they get the votes, they get in. That's my opinion. Now, are we going to play around with mail-in ballots? It's a whole different conversation. I say we shouldn't play around with mail-in ballots. I say we do it the way we've always done it, where there hasn't been major issues. And that's it. Punto y final. Period. The end. But we try to complicate things, and we make them more difficult than they need to be. We know that if we bring too many people to this country, we have a problem, an overflow problem. So what are we experiencing now? Problems with overflow. Hospitals that are crowded, schools that are being shut down to go to remote instruction so that people can live inside of the school because the tent housing is no longer suitable. Entire tent cities that are being erected to make space for people that have entered the country illegally at the invitation of President Biden, turning a blind eye, saying, don't come here. Come on in. Come on. Now, listen, it's Friday. I don't want to sit here and bark up a storm and tell you what's wrong in society. There's enough guys on the radio doing that. My job to make fun of people and crack a few jokes, talk to you in the process, and enjoy ourselves on the air. But I want to point those things out because it's crazy that they're going to fine Trump $350 million and the rest of us get screwed, right? We have to pay the bill for these 7, 8, 9 million new illegal aliens that are living in our country. And I'm not trying to demonize those people. If you've listened to this program before, you know that I'm not mad at them. I'm mad at Joe. I'm mad at now the impeached Alejandro Mayorkas. I'm mad at every last Democrat that supports these crazy open border policies. So what do? We keep fighting the good fight. We keep electing the right people. People say, oh, but the elections are rigged. And I say, you know what? Conservative Republican in Queens, New York, Vickie Paladino. She ran for the state Senate and lost, but made a good showing. She ran for city council and she won. She ran for re-election and she won in a landslide mandate. They have turned that place red. The Whitestone Republican Club. We're going to talk to her in a little bit, by the way. Hopefully she stayed awake and there's no major emergencies going on in New York that will prevent her from joining us in a little bit. But we're going to talk about what's it like with all these illegal immigrants all over the city and these guys going out, beating on cops, then going to other states and getting arrested in other states and then coming back here and others going and robbing Macy's in Queens and getting locked up again. Same guys. Crazy. That's what's happening in New York. And it's only going to get worse. Then there's a new study out that shows that the cost of child care, yeah, we're talking about, your little kid, daycare, is now close to the amount that it costs to educate a child in college. Let's talk about that. At some point, you got to think, my goodness, you got to tell your wife to stay home and teach the kid everything, right? You're going to homeschool and we're going to save a ton of money. You're going to be rich. I mean, if it's really that much money, $200,000 that you're going to spend in college, looks like you could spend that much in childcare. Wow. Anyway, so I want to talk about that as well. And then something a little bit lighter. It's Friday night. I want to talk about who pays on a date. Now, listen, I'm pretty traditional. I'm old school, medio machista, as they would say, right? Rather focused on machismo, what many now call toxic masculinity. But I believe guys should pay. I think we should ask you out on the date. If a girl asks me on a date, then I totally expect her to pay. But I think for the most part, guys are the ones that are asking girls on a date. Anyway, we'll talk about that once we get into the bottom half of the second hour. And, of course, Open Phone America, where we talk together. And you get to call in. And if you've never called this show, you can call in any time on any of these topics and speak with our guests. But if you want to bring your own topic to the table, it's a free-for-all. It's Friday night, and it's Open Phone America in the third hour, which is midnight for me here on the East Coast. I'm in New York time. But stick around, my friends. We're going to have a very, very good time tonight. I promise you that. That was my Speedy Gonzalez accent, by the way. And don't go anywhere. More to come. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia, and we continue our discussion on what is going on in New York City. Now, you remember when Eric Adams, I like to call him Elite Eric Adams, when he said, look, I'm not concerned at all in the least about what's going on, right? When we were talking about illegal immigration. Listen to this.
You pledged during your campaign to keep New York City a sanctuary, a city. Do you have any concern that policy is attracting more people to the border, more people to cross the border to make that dangerous trip?
No, not at all. This city has always been a sanctuary city, and we've always managed those who wanted to come to New York City to pursue the American dream.
All right, so pursue the American dream of robbing Macy's, beating up police officers, shooting people in Times Square, and everything else that comes along with what we're seeing with these Venezuelan gangs and other gangs and all sorts of people. We've got a ton of problems in New York City, and I want to get to the bottom of what's going on in the city with our good friend of the program, New York City Councilwoman from District 19, Vickie Paladino. Vickie, welcome.
Hey, good evening, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be chatting with you. It's always good to hear your voice. And that was a clip. Thank you. That was a clip of Mayor Eric Adams back in May last year. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to today, where he's waving the white flag and he's asking Joe El Baboso Biden for all sorts of federal help, when it seems like the power to fix the problem in some part lies right with him in the city, right? If we didn't have this catch and release system with the criminals, if we didn't have police that were kind of neutered, they're great police, but if you don't actually hold anybody and there's this no cash bail deal, where are we? What's your perspective on what's going on in the city, Vickie Paladino?
Well, Rich, we're in a hole that we're not getting out of anytime soon, and that's a very scary fact. You know, we see what's going on. It wasn't until that video came out with that the beatdown of the cops there in Times Square off of 45th Street. We are now at a point where I believe the mayor is ever so sorry that he opened the gates the way he did, but us, with being a sanctuary city, more or less we're forced to do this. He has to take these people in because of our sanctuary city status. But this mayor did a 180. He told everybody he doesn't want this anymore. We cannot sustain this. Where this happened in 22, when they first started to come in and he realized that the floodgates were open. We are allowing thousands and thousands in every month. And the latest number right now, according to what they know, and they still insist on calling them asylum seekers, not illegal immigrants flooding the border. So 177,000 that we know of. And right now we are having our care, for lack of a better word, over 65,600 immigrants right now, illegals, in our care. And we've opened about 216 sites for them. This is the actual data from the mayor's office that we receive as council members. So, you got Bragg as our DA. You have the discovery laws. You have ICE that they won't put back, and they should. That was week before last. Nicole Maliotakis, myself, Joe Borelli. For those who don't know, Joe Borelli is the minority leader of the Republican Party, and we have what's called a Common Sense Caucus, which grew by one Democrat member. So now we are 9 that oppose everything that comes to the city council floor pertaining to the illegal immigrants. And they just tied our cops up again, as you know, with 586, which means that they have to report, tie them up in paperwork, They want them to be, counselors now in neighborhoods. The next thing they're going to do is take guns away. We do have a crisis here. It's a gang crisis. We have MS-13, which has been here for quite a number of years on Long Island. They infiltrated the city. I'd say probably really strong about 8 years ago. They're very prominent. And now with what's coming over the border, which is the creme de la creme, criminals that are actually Venezuelans that are seeking out MS-13, and they are now forming some sort of camaraderie between these two gangs and really breaking things up badly here. Terrible. And let me go back to what I said about the beatdown of the cops. If that video did not go viral the way it did, nobody would have known about it because everything is being swept under the rug. And what's happening here is we are bringing what is commonplace in these third world countries into our country and our city. So this is a crisis. We're in crisis mode. There's no question about it.
Folks, we're on with Vickie Paladino. She was a suburban housewife living in Whitestone, Queens, saw some problems in her community, decided to run for state senate. She ran. She didn't win. She formed a club. She kept going, ran again. She won. She ran again. She won with an electoral mandate, a landslide. Who says that a conservative Republican, Trump-supporting Republican, can't win in New York City? I say it can happen, and she's living proof of it. We're going to continue our conversation with her straight ahead. Councilwoman Vickie Paladino, District 19, New York City, discussing what's going on with the migrant situation, illegal aliens. We're running out of space in New York City to where to put these people. And the solution, I believe, always lies within, right? For all of us, whether it's in our personal lives or anything else. And here we have to figure out how to make that happen. I think all eyes are on Eric Adams to see what he can do to close it down. Because obviously not every state in America is facing the problems that New York is. And I think to turn this around from being a sanctuary city, all you need is a good piece of legislation where he can use the influence that he has as mayor to go to a city council, get a resolution, and get it passed. I don't know if that's impossible or not, given the makeup. We'll find out from Councilwoman Vickie Paladino straight ahead. Of course, if you have a question or comment and you want to join the conversation, feel free to give us a call. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. 833-4-VALDEZ. Again, our guest, Councilwoman Vickie Paladino, District 19, New York City. We're coming right back with your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Because critics on the right have noted that New York City is a sanctuary city, and this migrant crisis comes with that territory. So what do you say to those who think you relinquish your right to complain about the stresses it places on your city because of that?
Well, I think that those comments coming from those far-right Trump-like Republicans who are continue to try to distort the reality that we do not have real immigration reform, that we should allow a true decompression strategy, protect our borders in the right way, and make sure that when you look at this city, the status of right to shelter no one who created this decades ago took into account that we were talking about hundreds of thousands of people potentially coming to the city.
That is Mayor Eric Adams now changing his tune. That was last September. And he continually changes his tune because I think he's realizing what Republicans have known all along. Now, we're going to continue our conversation with Councilwoman Vickie Paladino from New York City, District 19. Councilwoman, we have a couple of callers on the line. We're going to go to Derrick in Jamestown on WJTN. Derrick, very quickly, you're on with Councilwoman Vickie Paladino. Go right ahead.
Hey, I just want to say that this nation was founded on foreigners. And the very people, now you know I'm your opposer, Rich. I don't want you shooting yourself in the foot, brother, because those very ones that are running from wars, from foreign policies made by the United States government, they are people who are trying to put bread on the table and live a quiet life.
Yes. Well, Derrick, obviously everybody that's hungry in any part of the world is blaming United States foreign policy. And the answer to that is to come into the country illegally through Texas. I understand this philosophy. I don't agree with it. Like you said, I oppose your views on that. I don't think that's the answer. And to sit there and go back and blame the Northern Triangle and blame Reagan and blame everybody under the sun for people committing crimes today, how long can you blame anything, right? I think it's a cheap excuse. But the reality of the problem is that we've got people that are coming here. You've got women that are getting raped as they're coming across, and they're making their way to New York, and they're not all good people, right? That's just a fact, right? When Trump says they're bad hombres, he's telling the truth. You've got these Venezuelan crime gangs that are in New York City that are robbing, and even the analysts on CNN know that they're doing what they do here because they won't be arrested. Now, let's pivot. Derrick, thanks for the call. I want to pivot back to Councilwoman Vickie Paladino. And is there any insight for New Yorkers that are thinking, oh, my gosh, maybe one day we'll actually put the bad guys in jail?
We always hope for that. And the way to do that would be to remove Hochul as governor. Our mayor, I know, listen, let me address Derrick. Derrick, this isn't 1966. This isn't 1935. This isn't 1945. This is 2024. And what we have happening now are not hardworking people coming across the border. I live here. I don't know where you live. Where's Jamestown? Jamestown
That's
is where,
upstate.
Rich?
That's upstate.
Okay. And nobody's going upstate, mind you. None of these illegals, and they are illegals, and whoever doesn't want to believe that, well, that's just too bad, because they are swarming the border. And if you live upstate New York, I address this to you, Derrick. You don't have what we have in this city. Hochul refuses to put them upstate. She wants to drown our city. We are $7.3 billion with a B in debt to try to support these people who are riding mopeds, robbing people, open gunfights in shopping malls, drug deals. Just recently, a 65-year-old lady was taken by the hair. Her head was slammed into a light post, and she was almost dead. And that was just to steal her phone. He took off on his moped. We've got moped gangs. We got gangs on foot. They come here. We rolled out the red carpet for them, and now they are kicking us in the teeth. These are not hardworking people, okay? We had hardworking people. And for that reason, I could tell you this, because we worked, my sister owned a she still does, own a manufacturing company, and our ladies who sewed for us came here from Colombia and South American countries, hardworking, 30 years, 20 years. Those are not the people we have here today. These are 15-year-olds. These are 18-year-olds. These are 21-year-olds that know that they could do whatever they want and get away with it. They're getting away literally with murder. They are running through our streets, most recently after the beatdown of the cops in Times Square. had that video not gone viral, we would not be prosecuting the latest incident that happened with a 15-year-old just blocks away from where the beatdown happened in Times Square. Okay, did you hear about that, Rich?
Yeah, it was stealing shoes or whatever, and he pointed the gun at the cop?
Yes, and they tried to stop him. He pulled out a .45 caliber, and he grazed the cop, but shot a woman tourist from Brazil in her leg and took off half of her calf. And then after but let me explain. This was his third offense. Now, this was after the cops got beat down. So what happened was they found out he was convicted 2 other times, once in the Bronx and once right nearby where he did this other shootout on 45th and Broadway. And now they decided that they were going to lock him up, not ask for bail, keep him there as an extreme flight risk, okay? And they're charging him as an adult. If that did not happen with that video, everybody was down Bragg's neck, breathing down Bragg's neck, which, by the way, Hochul could remove Bragg with a stroke of a pen. Out. Gone. He could be removed. He is the worst DA our city has ever seen. And this goes way back to when he first got elected, when he made the list, a long list of at least 20 major felonies that he was no longer going to categorize as felonies. This is pre-migrant.
Yeah.
Okay?
He's very weak.
So,
he's very weak.
Very
now, let me ask you this. I know that she has the power as governor to remove the prosecutor, the DA. But what about like a resolution, a citywide resolution to change the status of New York City being a sanctuary city? Is that something that you could work with the mayor's office on? And do you think there are enough votes to pull something like that off?
Not enough votes, Rich, no. So there is a lawsuit presently pending because the mayor is, backing down. And what happened was it's still in the courts, but they keep postponing. But what everybody has to understand here is my city council just voted unanimously to override the mayor's veto. You see, the mayor on 586 and 549. 549 was dealing with restrictive housing on Rikers Island, and 586 was about the cops and tying them up with paperwork by having to report every interaction that they... Correct. So now the mayor tried. We went in for a special session where Adrienne Adams, our speaker, and she really ruled it. She pulled in her troops and overrode the mayor's veto. So 549 is now law. 586 is now law. So if you're talking about trying to get the mayor to pass anything through a sane city council, it's impossible. Impossible.
Right. Even when he's trying, they're not.
They're not. And that goes back to Bloomberg. When Bloomberg took the right of that veto pen away from the mayor and put it in the hands of the city council. So unless he's got a friendly city council, reasonable thinkers, common sense thinkers, only then would his veto stick. But because we have people in the city council right now that are far worse than the city council we had from 2014, that's de Blasio, until 2018, because de Blasio started in 2014 with dissolving ICE. And then by 2017, it was done. And the Kathy Hochul also has the ability to do something about ICE as well, which means that could put that they could cooperate with the police, and we could actually deport these felons. They don't belong here. Deport them, and that's what we need to do. But until that happens, which is a far, far, far down the road, that means replacing the Kathy Hochul at the head. Because I often say this, and it sounds harsh, so I'm I'm sorry if I offend anybody in advance. When you have a snake The only way to kill a snake is to cut off its head. If you cut off its tail, it will grow back a new tail. So we got to go to the top, which is the governor. And unless the governor does her job, which she will not, that's no help to our mayor. We get zero funding. So what we're doing is we are stressing out our taxpayers, the legal people that are here that are working hard, paying their taxes, and guess what? We have no rights. No more. They're gone. And it's very sad. And this is this is the desperate situation that we're in. You know, back in 29, Cuomo was about to sign the bail reform bill. And, when they put these bills in, the budget or whatever, when they put them in, it's mixed up with all this minutia, all these weeds. You got to seek these out line by line.
Yep, the devil's in the details, right?
There you go, 100%.
Vickie, hang on real quick. We're going to take a pause right here and come right back with Councilwoman Vickie Paladino, District 19 out of New York City. And when we come back, I want to ask a couple of questions about what's going on nationally and get her perspective on those. Plus, your calls coming up in this the following segment, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Councilwoman Vickie Paladino from the city of New York. And Councilwoman Vickie Paladino, I want to pick your brain a little bit. So the congressional seat once held by George Santos was flipped by Tom Suozzi. And I feel that this is something that might still be competitive, might still be in play because of the immigration situation in New York. And I think when it's a general election, this could potentially change hands. But I don't know if that's a naive view. What say you?
I don't think it's naive at all. The thing with Tom Suozzi, now that they tipped that CD3 district, Congressional District 3 falls into my district by about 18%. And you know how my district went. It went all red for me. And what they need, Tom Suozzi ran on the Republican message. All of a sudden, Tom Suozzi was saying that he is against what's going on at the border, that he is pro-cop and law and order, and he was talking like a Republican. And that's basically how Tom won this race. But we know how Tom votes, and we know what's going to happen once I said it. I said, we are going to have a conversation, and Tom reached out to me. It's good politics. And we're going to sit down and we're going to have a long conversation about what you plan to do. Are you going to stick to your word, or are you going to, was this just lip service that you gave the constituents on Long Island as well as here in Queens just so that you could get elected? I mean, flat out straight. There's no other way to say it. So yes, indeed, I do believe that this, with the right candidate, I believe that this is a winnable race again, most definitely. It's very sad that it happened.
Right. Now, he won by like 10 points or 8 points?
8 points.
8
yes,
points. So
8
I
points.
think she did a good showing, Mazie Philippe. Do you think she could make another run at it?
I don't know if they're going to choose Mazie to do that. I don't know. That's Nassau County GOP. That's not Queens GOP's job. That's their job because most of the district is on the North Shore of Long Island. And because my district is right there, it tips into me. But what's going to happen here, Rich, is they're redrawing the lines. And once they redraw the lines, I don't know what it's going to look like. At this point, all I do know is that they may come into my district by a little bit, and because I'm by the Whitestone Bridge, they're going to take this up into the Bronx. So who's ever going to run for this seat is going to have a long run because it's so much area to cover. It's a tremendous, tremendous congressional district. And to go from a little part of Suffolk County, for those that don't know, that's really far out on Long Island, come into Nassau, from Nassau into Queens, and then go over the bridge into the Bronx. You got to have a lot of energy, let me tell you. And a very strong message. Oh, yeah, a lot of energy and a lot of money. So they, you know, yeah, because of the area. And you know, Mozzie did have a good campaign. Mozzie did have a lot of money, but it was a 6-week run. And let me reiterate this. Tom Suozzi I view as an incumbent because Tom Suozzi is a known commodity here
for
2 decades, okay? So you took a relatively, a definite unknown, not a relatively unknown, an unknown, and you put her up against an incumbent, a strong incumbent. And I didn't see it as a great choice for that reason. I wish they would have been best if they would have picked somebody else that had more of life experience in the federal government with the issues and is a known commodity. Yeah. And it was a 6-week or an 8-week race, Rich. What are you going to do with 8 weeks?
I think it's also really tough when you were going against, you know, everybody slamming Santos. So that makes it really tough as well. Vickie, I'm out of time in this segment, but I want you to let everybody know how they can make a donation to your campaign and support you however they can.
Well, I just opened up my new campaign for 25. So it would be Vickie for City Council, Vickie Paladino for City Council 2025.
Outstanding. Vickie Paladino, New York City Councilwoman for District 19. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for staying up late and having a discussion with us.
And I thank you, Rich, so very much. I hope to see you soon.
You bet. God bless. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go very quickly to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA, and check in with Dan. Has a comment on Councilwoman Vickie Paladino. Dan, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. What a splendid guest. The woman, every word rings true, and she doesn't. You can hear the difference in her comments as opposed to the mayor, where he's tiptoeing on every word that he speaks.
I think you're 100% right. This is a perfect example of when you have somebody doing things for the right reasons. Dan, thank you for your call and your compliment. Let's go to Justin, Moorhead, Minnesota, WDAY. You have a comment on immigration. Go right ahead quickly.
Yeah, good talking to you again. I want to comment on that last caller when you had the guest on, and he was basically saying, you know, we're a nation of immigrants. And I'm so sick of hearing that argument from people. We are a nation of immigrants for sure. But the difference was when the immigrants were coming in back in the 30s, 40s, 50s through Ellis Island, we needed low-skilled labor, right? These people were assimilating. These people now are not doing that.
Well, and the biggest part about that was they were paying their own way, right? There were public charge rules that said that they couldn't live off of the public dole, and they had to have sponsors, and that seems to not be the case anymore. Justin, thanks for the call from Minnesota, WDAY. My buddy John in Vero Beach, the music means I got to go, but we'll get to you in open phones at the top of the next hour. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And the suspects in the Kansas City shooting at the end of the parade that's being charged as a mass shooting are going to be charged as adults, is what I'm looking at here. This is according to the Post-Millennial. The third suspect, who's also a juvenile, has been released. And just a quick update on that. It was revealed that two of the juvenile suspects detained for the mass shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade will be charged as adults. A third suspect, who is also a juvenile, has been released after it was determined that he was not connected to the massacre that claimed the life of a local DJ and mother and injured 22 others. According to the Daily Mail, the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office said that while specific charges have not been filed, the duo will not be treated as juveniles. And I think that's a great thing because what they did, kids don't do. And I think it's always important they remember that you just can't do this type of thing. And speaking of this local DJ, I want to put a name to her. Her name is Lisa Lopez Galvan. And she was shot and murdered at the end of the Chiefs Super Bowl parade just on Wednesday. And many locals know her. Those who don't know her now. And it's a shame. Obviously, anybody in my business that gets murdered is horrible. What is the station that she's with, Alex? KKFI in Kansas City area. Well, my hat goes off to her and her family. My condolences. It's always a shame when anybody dies. This woman's just about my age, 43 years old, and mother. I have kids. I totally relate here. She was just there at a parade, and now she's not. Why? Because of these criminals that were having their own personal dispute, and she got caught up in the middle of it. So that's a shame. It really is. And I want to also switch gears back to some of the news of the day. We've got Trump being barred from operating his business in New York for 3 years and ordered to pay $355 million as a penalty in the civil trial in New York. And it made me think, I don't even have $355 million. Most people I know don't have it. I'm sure Trump has it, but that doesn't mean that he should be forking it over, right? This is a crazy number that for whatever they're claiming that he did, inflating property values, this, that, and the third, borrowing money from a bank that he ended up paying back and paying back on time and paying back every penny. And somehow the government's now entitled to $355 million 18 years after this whole transaction even happened. It just is crazy to me that this is happening and nobody's even questioning why it's happening. But it's happening. And I can't help but think, what if I did have $355 million? What would life look like for me and for my family? And it makes me think I need to better manage the money that I currently have because, you don't do it with what you got. You end up losing it, right? It's use it or lose it. You got to do it right the first time around. And I saw this article. Fascinating. Listen to this. Right? The cost of childcare is now equal to the cost of college. Yep, you heard that right. And that's not me saying that. That's USA Today. There's a headline here by Emily Koblenz. And here it goes. Parents say they could spend more than $36,000 on childcare this year. It doesn't make sense. I agree. Parents are depleting their savings accounts to cover the cost of childcare, according to a new report released by Care.com. They're working multiple jobs, going into debt, and ultimately leaving the workforce because even in a double-income home, the rising costs are too hard to manage. Care.com is the largest online marketplace connecting families to childcare, and it surveyed 2,000 households on what they are on track to spend this year. The report found that 49% of them said they plan to spend about $18,000 on childcare in 2024. 23% of them said they're going to spend more than double that, $36,000 this year in childcare. Wow. In some cases, childcare is now costing more than a college education. Now, there's a few other things that the survey found, and we'll get into that straight ahead. But just the mere fact that you're now going to spend that much on childcare, for the first 3, 4 years, 5 years of your kid's life until they can go to something more affordable, like a school-based program or something like that. And that's literally a college degree on the front end. Then you got to save for the college degree on the back end, right after high school. Absolutely crazy that you got to send your kids to college twice now. I mean, I couldn't imagine it. I really couldn't imagine. I'm glad my kids are big. But bottom line here, how do we make sense of this? How do we make this work? I want to bring in our buddy Derrick Kinney, welcome him back to the show. He's the CEO of the Good Money Framework, and you've seen him, doing public addresses and been on this program definitely before, telling us about things that are happening in the world of finance. Derrick Kinney, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Rich, thank you for having me tonight. Always good to be with you.
You bet. So let's talk about this. This is a pretty crazy article where I was floored by it. I have a kid two kids in college right now, one that's 18 and a freshman, and one that's 22 and she's a senior. And they don't overlap for that long. One will be gone soon, and the other one will, is still embarking on the beginning of her 4-year journey. But I can't help but think that if I had to pay the cost of a college education back when they were kids, I don't know that we would have made it here.
No, and Rich, I got to be honest with you. I'm pretty salty about this tonight. You caught me in a pretty angry mood, and here's why. When I think about hardworking parents who are forced to make decisions about how they do their livelihood and as it relates to their kids. I mean, people's kids are their number one prized possession. They'll do whatever it takes. And when they feel like, whether it's the government or it's the system that's outpricing their ability to provide quality care for their kids, that just makes me angry. I mean, you and I are talking Friday night right now. Mm-hmm. Many Americans have gone to a job. Many of them were just tolerating, and they're spending almost half of their salary, in some cases one spouse's entire salary, just to pay for basic child care, not even luxury care, not even learning a whole lot, just simple, more of a glorified babysitting program. That makes me flat angry tonight, and it's something we've got to take a look at and find a solution for as soon as possible.
It's funny you say that, and on a quick aside, but same vein here, both of my kids have had part-time jobs working in childcare facilities. And the other day, I picked up my daughter from the one she works at, and she works there and at a movie theater. She's got 2 jobs, and she's a full-time student. And I pick her up, and I said, I feel like I did the wrong thing in life. Like, I should have opened one of these childcare places because they make a fortune. And I happened to, in my car, I had somebody who's a mom, and has a 7-year-old, and she was saying, I looked at that place and it was nice. It was a couple of blocks further away from where I worked, and I worked over here, and this place was a little more expensive, but it included everything. It included diapers and this and that. And she was just giving me the scoop, and I was like, wow. And I think the number she was giving me a couple of years back was something like $1,400. And I thought, man, imagine you have, 10 kids. That's some coin coming in. You can definitely cover your rent and some employee salaries with that. Again, you're not going to have 10 kids. You're probably going to have 30. And some of these places have 50 kids. And whatever the case is, my point was you can really make a living with these things. And it reminded me of another conversation I had with a buddy of mine who told me that he got invited to an all-expense-paid trip to Mexico. And I said, wow, what does that guy do for a living that he's inviting all his friends to Tulum on a weekend trip? And he said, oh, the guy owns several daycares. And he's got contracts with the state. And I said, oh, my gosh, I'm in the wrong business, Derrick Kinney.
Well, I think we're both in the wrong business. And, one of the perspectives I look at this, Rich, is middle class. The middle class right now are struggling. 20 years ago, everyone would almost self-identify as, I'm in the middle class, I can put food on the table, I can provide for my family, I've got a steady job. Now, the Washington Post comes out with an article yesterday that talks about only 1/3 of Americans say they are in the middle class. And what's holding them back is the inability to save for retirement. So I take what you and I are talking about, this base level need of providing quality care for my kids,
Right.
if I can't barely make that payment, how can I possibly save for my retirement? What we have right now is a middle class death spiral, and we've got to find a way to stop it. But unless we have a change at the top, or we educate people on how they can make more money and really empower them financially, I worry the problem's only going to get worse.
This is, part of the drum that I beat on a daily basis is, the economy, the economy, the economy. And I think that's very relevant when we're looking at, again, my situation. I just look at my two kids and I go, wow, they have to work one day and like have a life for themselves. And living across the river from New York City, you would think it's a little more affordable in Bergen County, New Jersey. But the reality is, if you're like graduating college, I don't think you could live here unless you're on your parents' payroll somehow. There's no way. I mean, rent for like a one-bedroom apartment is like almost $3,000 a month. How does somebody live a life like that, Derrick Kinney? Does everybody leave and go to a more affordable state? Like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing out there?
Well, even the report you mentioned, they talk about where are the most expensive places for childcare. And they've got here Massachusetts, D.C., California, right. Washington, Connecticut. I mean, all of those are sort of the obvious suspects. But what we find is more and more people are fleeing New York City. They're fleeing Chicago to go to the suburbs, go to more, I would say, friendlier economic states. But here's the big concern that I've got, and that is right now we're wanting to have people contribute to this economy. It's an economy where people can put their talents in. They can be rewarded for that. But when one spouse is faced with, look, I could make an impact in my company, or I could use that entire amount of money to pay for my son or daughter for childcare. What it's forcing them to do is just stay at home. And now what we're doing is we're holding back some of the resources where people could have to make our economy better. And, Rich, one of the other pieces that I'm very, very concerned about right now is when I think about where the economy is headed, if we were to see any type of a recession later on this year, we know that Joe Biden, God bless him, is polling at about 30% economic confidence across the aisle. Yeah, and that's from like CNN and these other liberal areas. When
Before
they say the numbers are low.
To Biden on the economy, I want to take a quick pause to make sure you have enough time to cover it on the other side. Folks, we're on with Derrick Kinney. He's been on before. He's a fantastic guest, especially when it comes to business growth and discussing things that are part of what he does, right, as CEO of the Good Money Framework. So stick with us. We're coming right back with Derrick Kinney, his website, goodmoneyframework.com. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, we left off with our guest, Derrick Kinney, and you were mentioning Joe Biden and the current economic situation. Derrick Kinney.
Yeah, Rich, one thing that I think I'm not alone in my thinking here, but we have a confidence crisis that has reached a record level. And again, it's Friday night, hardworking Americans are relaxing. They've got their feet kicked up. They're reflecting on the week, hoping next week gets better. But my worry is, will it? And if they don't feel like the leadership at the top in the White House has a grasp on not just the economy, but these bottom line parent issues that people care about, how can we keep costs down? When I go to the grocery store, I almost feel like I need to take a bank loan now just to buy meat, for goodness sakes. And when I think about that, and I think about the cost of childcare, that becomes almost like a college prep class because it's preparing you to pay for college. That is wrong. And I want to tell you, a couple I met with. I do some specialized business consulting for business owners, and I met with an entrepreneurial couple, and they were talking about how they've got a couple of key employees who have young children, and what they're faced with is, do they bear the cost of the child care for these employees to retain them because they add so much value? And so here are two entrepreneurs who are taking the risk. They're putting their own company, on the line every day, and they're making a conscious decision to help offset childcare costs for their key people because they know if they don't, those people might jump ship. And so what I find is not everybody can be as generous as that couple, but to be competitive and to stand out, many business owners may need to think about that as an additional benefit to retain and even attract quality people.
I think that's and the example that I gave you of the mom I was talking to in my car when I was picking up my daughter from her job, that's what it was. She worked for a large hospital, and they had an on-site facility that was expensive. There was a place a little bit cheaper, a block or three away, but it was older. It wasn't as new. It didn't include everything that the expensive place included, so she ended up going with the more expensive place until her kid was, a little older. And I think parents are faced with these decisions on a regular basis. Do I go with the highest quality? Do I, where do I cut a little bit in order to make this work? And some can afford it, some can't. And I think that's the conundrum that they face. And I don't know what the answer is to this. I wish I could say, get rid of Biden, everything gets fixed. And I don't know if that's going to fix this. Childcare is extraordinarily expensive. And I think, the trend that we're seeing of people saying, I'm going to stay home and I'm not going to work and I'm going to take care of my kid. I think we're probably going to see a lot more of that until we don't, because ultimately I think the free market is what dictates. And when we start seeing that there's too many childcare places because people are saying, I'm just going to do it myself. Then all of a sudden they'll have to lower their prices. I think that's just how the market works. Do you think that we get to a place like that, or is that a pipe dream?
Yeah. No, Rich. I think what you said there is the roadmap for the future. And, as I like to say, until the pain is great, the change does not occur. And until we see the pain so great on couples, we're likely going to see a new franchising model emerge of affordable child care for busy executives. Much like we see nobody gets married in a church anymore, there's wedding venues, and they play volleyball in the big gymnasiums, and they play. All of those areas are opportunities that until the pain got great, the change did not occur. And so I think that's where we're at. But what I would tell people as we finish tonight, just one thing to think differently. I think if you want this year economically to be better than next year, you've got to find ways to make more money, and that may be in the job you're in right now.
Folks, check out Derrick Kinney. He's the author of Good Money Revolution, CEO of Good Money Framework. Check out his website. Follow him on Instagram. I know I do. Derrick Kinney, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being here. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I was going to go to a caller named Leslie calling from California on KVTA, but she's not there. So we will continue. Leslie, thanks for the call, but no thanks for hanging up. I really wanted to get your perspective on that. Anyway, we're going to continue our conversation on what's going on. I wanted to pose a question to all of you, which is when it's date night. Now, I don't know if you're doing date night with your spouse, if you're doing date night with different people every week, if you're doing date night with a girlfriend, however you do your date night. I wanted to get your perspective on it because when you go out, I want to know, what's the expectation on who's paying? Is there a built-in expectation to go Dutch where you split the bill? Is there an expectation for the man to pay? Is there an expectation for whomever did the inviting to pay? I'm really curious to know those things, and you can always weigh in on those. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. But I want to get to the bottom of that, and to do that, I have enlisted the help of Jennifer Styers. Jen Styers is the host of the Lovability Show with Jen Styers. She's also the owner of a boutique matchmaking firm, and she's also launched a new app that we'll talk about a little bit in the next segment. And she gives advice as a coach on dating and relationships. Jennifer Styers, welcome back.
Oh, I love being here. Nice to be chatting with you, Rich. And I hope people will call in too.
Yeah, me too. I hope so. And this is there's a lot going on, right? So the topic that I'm asking is specific, at least in the New York Times. The article here is pitting it on Gen Z, saying, you know, what's the payment etiquette for Gen Zers? But for me, I'm really asking everybody, because again, I'm a Gen Xer, and if a girl asks me out on a date, like a legit, hey, what are you doing later? I'd like to take you out to dinner. I'm not paying for dinner, and I'm also probably not going to drive. I'm going to tell her, pick me up. I'll go wherever you're taking me. You know, because it was her idea.
Women call you and ask you to dinner. I'm shocked.
Yeah, that has happened to me, actually more than once, but it doesn't happen all the time. And when it has, I stick to my guns, and I say, listen,
Good.
I'm not easy,
You
all right?
should.
You know, and I like steak. Anyway. But that's my rule on that. And otherwise, I think, look, I'm paying, because I'm usually the one inviting them. I'm saying, hey, what are you doing? Let's go to this, or let's do that, and let's go. So I feel like it's just appropriate hospitality to pay the bill. And I also think it's appropriate for you to offer, and, you know, for me to say, no, I'm good, thanks, no problem. I invited you. If you invite me, you pay. And that's cool, too. But what is your, from your perspective as, you know, as the host of the Lovability Show with Jennifer Styers and a coach on relationships and dating, what is it that you see the most of? Is it guys paying? Is it people going Dutch? Does it really vary by Gen Z, Gen X, boomers? What's it look like?
It does vary. Amazingly, it does vary. Yeah, I think the Gen Xers, they're splitting the bill a lot of times. I mean, the women want to. I mean, it's crazy, but they want to. And then, you know, as you get into the somewhat a little bit older generations, there's still that yin and yang that the men should pay. And I'm like you. I think if a woman asks a man out, she should pay. If you know, if a man asks a woman out, he should always expect to pay. And you know, I do think that I've heard women say, even in, you know, Gen Z, you know, they'll say, well, I didn't like him. I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, so I offered to pay half. I don't know why. And he, you know, sometimes the guys will let them, which a guy never should do that. And if you ask a woman out, she shouldn't be paying, but a woman doesn't want to feel an obligation, and so I understand that as well. But ladies, I will say this. To any ladies listening, let the man pay. If he asks you out, allow him to do that. That is his job. And this is, I think, Rich, one of these days we're going to talk about it some more, because you came on my podcast to talk about this. I think this is why guys are getting away with all this junk, where they're not stepping up, because women aren't letting them.
Well,
let him
I agree.
pay.
There's a movement, right? There's a movement afoot that comes from the feminists that is really, I think it's stupid, honestly, but I think it takes away power and allure and beauty from women, and it takes away some of the power and masculinity and bravado that men should be bringing to the table. And I agree. I mean, I think there's a pursuit, right? Girls are pretty, guys are not pretty. It would be a very weird, right, dynamic for to have. I mean, okay, so a couple of girls that may have asked me to dinner, but it's not a regular thing for me to have women that are in pursuit of me. I think it's not even a natural dynamic, right? Even the cavemen, they chased the women to knock them over the head and drag them into a cave. It's the natural order of things.
It is
I
natural.
Feel. And if some women may feel unnatural, right, and think, oh no, I'm going to make a move, and that's fine. You know, you and I have spoken when I was on your podcast. I was talking about my girlfriend at the time, and And she had approached me, and she was a friend, somebody I had only seen platonically. I thought she was very attractive, and I got along well with her. But because she was such a close family friend, and I knew her mom well, I knew her whole family, it never crossed my mind, that I would date her, because I wasn't a very serious dater. I'm good for a couple of dates and then I disappear. I become Casper the Friendly Ghost. So I realized, this isn't somebody that I'm not serious enough for a serious person where I know their family. It ended up working out really, really well. And then it got rocky and then it got better again. And, I'm in the on again cycle from the on again, off again. And I think we have figured out that when you approach these situations, either of us, right? In Spanish, we'd say ambos, both of us, guns drawn, you're going to end up shooting, right? But if you leave the gun at home and you approach a situation where you're not willing to pull your gun out and point it at somebody, then you actually do get to a different resolution where you can actually approach things as a couple, as a team, rather than me versus you, which always ends up poorly. And that's probably a whole separate topic. But going back to this payment stuff, I think this is even if a woman is pursuing you, it's going to be rare, and they're only going to do it to the point where they're twirling their hair and saying, "Hey, I think you're handsome," and they're putting the ball in your court. What are you going to do with that ball? It's still on you, right? Because you're still the man. So I think that's still a thing in my world, in my opinion, and I think it's because it matches the natural order of things. I don't care how old you are. I think you could believe different things because of feminism or this, that, and the other, and feel like, okay, I should go a different route. But ultimately, I think that's what works best. But what do I know?
You know a lot. you know a lot. And when women step up to do things like that, then it kind of sets the tone for what the relationship is going to be like. So, women have got to think about, that piece of it as well. And, back to just what you said about, guns drawn, that I think that comes from the fact that people are always looking for what's wrong with somebody. They're always in that state of, what are you saying wrong? What are you doing wrong? And that's the thing, whether you're on a first date or you're on a, 20th date, that we need to get out of that place and try to look and find what we like about somebody, and be looking for those things, because otherwise your guard's up all the time, right? And your walls are up all the time.
Yeah, and honestly, what you just said, if you're looking for what's wrong, you're going to find it. And it's a very self-defeating behavior, but one that I understand, and I'm guilty of it as well. For years, I dated with no intention of anything serious because I just didn't want to go through the work, right? There's a lot of work in getting to know someone and trusting someone and trying to explore that idea. And ultimately, I think it's all self-protection. You just don't want to go through, I was in a divorce that cost me a lot of money and changed my life. And that was the last thing I want to do is allow that to happen again.
Yeah,
right.
You have to wait till you're ready. Whether that's emotionally, physically, whatever, I mean, you got your walls up for a while and then they'll eventually come down. So, it
takes time to change perspective.
It does. It does. But there is a yin and a yang. And regardless of, how successful women can get and how much money they make, we still need to respect that order, because we do, even busy women. I'm that woman, when my date comes to pick me up, I don't want him to ask me where we're going. I want him to know. I want him to have a plan. I want him to have a reservation. I want him to be in charge, because I've been in charge all day and I don't want to do it anymore. It's so refreshing to have a man that can step up and do those things and pay the bill.
And it's very I'm going to use the word unmanly, but I don't mean it in a pejorative way. I mean, like, I don't know me or any of my friends, or I should say, nor any of my friends, that would ever really feel like, oh, I can't wait to get home so my wife could tell me where we're going to dinner. Like, how do you live a life like that, right? I don't think any guy would even feel comfortable with a situation like that. It just doesn't seem natural to me. But maybe I'm wrong. If you have a different opinion or you'd like to chime in on this conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your comments, suggestions, and everything else you want to say. Let's go to Steve in Atlanta, Georgia. Steve is calling us from WGKA, the A. And Steve, you're on with Jennifer Styers and me, Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Ms. Styers, thanks for being a guest. I guess again, huh? You like her.
Yeah,
I
she's
like her
terrific.
too. I love her. I really love her. Ms. Styers, this is my question to both of you too, okay?
Sure.
So she mentioned the order. And where does the order come from? She mentioned yin and yang. Where does that come from? Well, that's good and evil. I mean, that's what we are. We're talking about the Bible, right? And we're talking about the other religions that talked about the good and the evil. And the evil does exist. So the things that are taking over society now the evil in society now, the bad, the evil, the demons, want us to keep children at a minimum. No children. What's the whole point of the demon except to keep children from happening?
Yeah, listen, I get your point because we talked about that yesterday, and you're just taking a spiritual perspective on it. But it's exactly like this article that we read yesterday with the professor that was saying, you can't have kids anymore because how dare you have kids without considering the morality of bringing a child into this world? And, I thought to myself, climate change is the last thing as a dad of two. I never said, hey, hun, let's have a baby. Oh, hold on. Let's see what the sea levels are, right? Nobody does that. Nobody does that, Steve. But you're right. And so much of this feminist activity, it's anti-family, it's anti-God, and it makes a lot of sense. And it challenges the natural order of things. Jennifer Styers.
Yeah, I have to just say, I just think there's so many things. God, politics, here we go. There's just so many things in the world trying to lead us away from family. So many things. And away from the traditional, heterosexual relationship. And, it is what it is. I feel like, every person has to stand strong in who they are and what they believe and stay educated. I don't know. It's such a big conversation to get into, especially for me right now.
Sure.
So,
No, and I get it. Listen, I think these are the things that you kind of in the dating world, these are the philosophical differences. I'm a big believer in shared values and
100%.
common ground, right? But there are areas that are hard no, right? They're non-negotiable. And if you don't see eye to eye on certain things, that you don't see eye to eye on them. And what are you going to do? You just got to deal with that and say, hey, we'll agree to disagree. Sometimes you're agreeing to disagree on an issue. Sometimes you're agreeing to disagree on something that's way bigger, like, the existence of God and evil and everything else, kind of like Steve mentioned. And I think those are the things you're going to find out when you're inviting somebody out to dinner that you're going to pay for.
Exactly. No, and it is so important that people are aligned with those things, and people are leading with that now in dating. Like, people will not cross political barriers. They won't. I was given a lot of slack for doing a heterosexual only app. That's what I'm doing. That's what I know. And, it's what I know. And so it's just, we live in a really different world, and people just have to know what they stand for. They have to know their values, and you have to be willing to find somebody and really dig to make sure that those match, because down at the, as you get down the road, if you're not eye to eye on those things, those are the things that are deal breakers. You find those out right up front. Where, what do you believe? And so, Steve's from my hometown in Georgia. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. So, go Dogs.
Okay, from the A. All right, Jennifer Styers, stick around. I want to learn more about this app of yours. Very controversial app where men date women and women date men. We're going to talk about that straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Jennifer Styers. She's a dating and relationship coach. She's the host of the Lovability Show with Jennifer Styers. And Jennifer Styers, you've created an app, and I said earlier that it was controversial because it's for men to date women and for women to date men. Tell us more about it.
Well, it's a little bit more than a dating app. It's matchmaking. It's curated matches. I have been doing this a long time and listening to all the feedback people are giving about, the dating apps and just the junk, the swiping, everything's superficial. There's just no substance, and so many good people are getting passed over on these apps. And so I wanted to, now that AI is out, it's just given me an opportunity to create something that could produce quality matches and match on the things we were talking about: values, lifestyle, things we believe in, and that's the way that it works. So we do hit and touch on looks a little bit, but just a little bit. It's definitely not a looks only app, which I'm happy about. So I think sometimes love comes in the most unexpected places. And as a matchmaker, I have definitely found that, somebody goes on a first date and they're like, oh my God, they're so great. We're so attracted, just couldn't keep my hands away from them. And I think, oh God, when's it going to end? it's going downhill fast. And then if they leave a date and they say, you know what, I really like them. We had a great conversation. I'm not sure that I'm attracted. It's not somebody I would have picked for myself, but we're going to go out again. Those are my people to get married.
Now,
so,
how do people find the app?
It's called Lovey, Lovey, and it's on Android and iOS. So it's everywhere. Yes.
Oh, wow. All right, folks, check out the Lovey app, Lovey, from Jennifer Styers, her website, lovejen with 2Ns.com. Love Jen. Check her out. Give her a follow on the social media. Jennifer Styers, always a pleasure. Thanks for your insight. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for staying up late with us.
Thanks, Rich, for having me.
You bet. Folks, more to come straight ahead. It's Open Phone America. You name the topic, we have the conversation. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome. It's hour number 3, Friday night. Our phone number, 833-4825-337-8334 Valdez, if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation. And, of course, the big story of the day, Trump has been fined $355 million by this judge in New York, Arthur Engeron. Guy hates his guts. His wife hates his guts. It's quite jarring when you see this. We also have the juvenile suspects in the Kansas City mass shooting are going to be charged as adults. We still don't have their names. They have not been released because they are juveniles, but they are being charged as adults, so we'll see if that changes anytime soon. And let's see, what else do we have here? The Office of the Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services has issued a statement saying that the Biden administration did not vet adults that were housing illegal immigrant children. That's a shame, and that shouldn't be happening. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, is that Dr. Bandy Lee? Hold on a second. This was interesting. Yep. So the psychiatrist who led the effort back in 2017 demanding a 25th Amendment ouster of then-President Donald Trump says she does not have the same concerns about President Joe Biden, despite a Justice Department report last week that said Biden has diminished faculties. That's a quote from the report. Dr. Bandy X. Lee, she's a forensic psychiatrist who edited the 2017 book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, where 37 psychiatrists and mental health experts assessed a president. And she told the Daily Signal and the Heritage Foundation that this wasn't the case for Biden. It's a different type of case. She says that cognitive decline is a normal part of aging, but she concluded the 25th Amendment question, therefore, is even more relevant to Trump as long as he wishes to be president again, but neither appropriate nor relevant for Biden at this time. Isn't that something? And again, this woman, a very nice person, I'm going to say. She did a debate with the great one, Mark Levin, on radio, probably about an hour long. And they just walked through this every step of the way. And it was, I would say it was, he maintained his cool and so did she, but I don't think she was able to sway anybody over to her column that she had diagnosed Trump without ever meeting him, saying that he was nuts and that we should remove him from office just based on what she'd seen on television. I think that was ultimately something that people didn't believe. But I was in the studio that day when that happened, and it was an amazing conversation. And every break, I was the guy that was talking to her. And I was like, you want to stick around? Don't go anywhere, please. We want to keep you on for as long as we can. And it was a really good day. Anyway, I want to get to your calls as well. There's a few stories I want to mention in my Midnight Zoo list over here. We've got, let's see here. We talked about, so Putin killed Alexei Navalny, right? Or at least he died in a Russian prison. This is the guy he tried to poison last year, the year before, 2 years maybe 3, actually. Might have been 21 when that happened. And then he was hiding, and then he went back to Russia, and then boom, now he's dead. I don't know how or what or who, because, people die in prison all the time, a la Jeffrey Epstein, right? And I guess we'll find out, or maybe we'll never find out. Again, you heard about the $355 million penalty that they've put on Trump and suspending his ability to operate a business in New York. That's nuts. One of my favorite places is his little bar in Trump Tower, 45 Wine and Whiskey Bar. Very nice bar. Great staff, good people there. And I wondered, does him not running it mean that just someone else has to run it? I mean, it's really crazy to think that they're even going to try and impose a penalty like that. Let's see. What else do we have here? We have this man that was charged for walking off with a gun that fell on the ground. Yeah, so that the Kansas City shooter from that parade earlier in the week was tackled by a bystander. I guess the gun went flying, and somebody else picks up the gun and tried to make off with it. Well, that person was now charged for picking up and walking off with the gun, and they were charged with an unlawful possession charge. Joe Manchin has announced he will not be running for president, which is pretty good, because obviously that was not going to work out well for him. It's kind of late in the game to get involved. And let's see here. I can't even begin to talk about this one. Fentanyl, lollipops, maybe after the bottom of the hour. And let's see. Then we have this one. This is an interesting story. 21-year-old man from Tennessee flies to Michigan and attempts to enroll in a local high school. Why? To pursue a relationship with his 17-year-old girl. That's crazy. And this guy got in a world of hurt for this. So we're going to talk about that as well as everything that you guys are bringing to the table. I see we got calls from Texas, Iowa, Tampa, Florida, and more coming in. Let's see here. Let's go to Eduardo calling from Tampa, Florida, WWTK. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Rich, thank you for taking my call. Hey, I got to tell you, what do you think about the KC Police Department possibly, I'm not saying this is absolute, maybe getting a little phone call from D.C. about holding back on the names? Because just like the one over there in the Bronx, these suspects are young and they're black, under 30 years old, and we don't want that on the news. I listened to the Spanish news, and they did the same thing. They didn't advertise the race or the names either.
Right. Well, I don't think they know. I mean, I saw a video. It was very obscure from what I could see. And I've always made the supposition that, being in this business where I consume a lot of news, that two things are happening, right? If you hear that there was a shooter or some sort of crime that was committed and there's no information about the race of the person, it's almost safe to assume that they're African American, right? That it's a black person, because the media has always done this. And insofar as I've been observing the media, that's how it is. It's like the default. If it was a Hispanic person, it would say Latinx, Hispanic person, asylum seeker, whatever they want to call it, but they would call it something. And if it were a white person, it would say white man, shoots, Latinx woman and whatever. So clearly it's none of those. And I'm venturing to say that I'm probably right here. I have not seen any video other than the big aerial footage that I saw. And in that footage, I just saw a guy running. I don't think you could really make out whether they are, Chinese, Asian, black, white, Hispanic, anything. So I don't know. I don't know that anybody has that information because I don't think the police have released it. So I don't think they have a name or a gender or even an actual age. But I do think it's safe to presume that when you don't hear anything, that it's typically that they're black men. And that's not a rule that I've made, and it's not a rule that exists anywhere that I think we can prove. It's just an observation that I've had in observing news over the years that tends to be how it works out, Eduardo.
Yeah, Rich, can I say one more thing? I think they need to hold these people because they should be able to learn like some kind of trade. I mean, this crime wave was born from the George Floyd aftermath. That's something that needs to maybe pop up on a commercial.
Yeah, I don't know the details of it, honestly. I know that it said that there was a personal dispute between these two guys. I do know that I think a lot of I think Kansas City has had issues with crime for a long time. And I don't know if it's specifically to George Floyd or not. I do know that we've kind of normalized the things that arose during George Floyd and like the looting and those types of things, and they never went away. I mean, they may have stopped in large part because people aren't taking to the streets in the numbers of hundreds at a time, but we're still seeing craziness where even in New York. I mean, there are still movements in New York, attempts to try and disarm the NYPD when they're the ones that are getting shot at by 15-year-old Venezuelan gang members. So clearly there's a disconnect here. Some people believe that only bad people should have guns and that good people, don't need them because they're good people. I think that's a very naive approach to life. And if, you are able to have a gun, then you should probably have one just because it's your right. And that's my belief there. I do agree that we should have a focus on trades or any type of employment. Nobody should really be sentenced to a life of poverty because they lack a skill. My hope is that everybody's going to learn something and be able to do something to succeed and to do what they do. and some of us are more fortunate than others to do things that we love to do, but it doesn't change the fact that we need to do something. So I think you raise an interesting point there. Eduardo in Tampa, Florida on WWTK. Thank you, brother. Have a great weekend. Folks, we're getting to the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your calls and more on all of the hot issues of the day. We're going to talk a little bit about Alexei Navalny in a little bit. Biden had drawn a line in the sand a couple of years ago and definitely didn't keep his word on that. Let's go to Jim calling from Kansas City, Missouri, listening online through KFNX in Phoenix. Jim, what's your thought on what happened at the Kansas City Chiefs parade?
Hi, Rich. Thank you for taking my call. My thought is that I'm not buying, if what I heard is true, and I'm sure that most of it is, I'm not buying that it was just a dispute. Because if it was a dispute, you would just shoot one or two people. Instead, he shot like dozens of times into a crowd of children. And, so in my opinion, and if it's true that police officers are running toward the gunfire, then he should be charged with assault on a law enforcement officer, and he should be charged with dozens of counts of attempted murder or whatever it is you get charged with when you shoot a machine gun. I mean, in my opinion, the gun is of little consequence because people do this all the time with cars or pickup trucks. They just run right into a crowd of people. It's the same thing.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I think that you got to, if you don't throw the book at people that are doing these things, they're going to keep doing them. The example has to be so severe, zero tolerance, zero everything. Just, go hard. Because if you don't go hard on something like this, people ultimately, I think, lose respect for you. And they're like, you're weak. You just got to show strength in a situation like this. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're spot on here. Thank you, Jim, for your call. Kansas City, Missouri, listening on KFNX out of Phoenix. And let's see, where do we go from here? Let's go to Ron, Council Bluffs, Iowa, listening on KMA. Go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich. I'm just going to tell you what I've learned through the news media. And there's another one that I get some information on is A Matter of Fact is another news outlet that I pick up. Some lady narrates it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, here's what I've learned. The state of Texas has passed some new legislation, but effective March 1 of this year, coincidentally, our congressman said it'll be on vacation. Anyway, this legislation takes effect March 1, which says that the state of Texas can arrest and detain illegal immigration. They have built a facility and are massing troops right now, National Guard troops in Eagle Pass, Texas. I believe we're going to have a big showdown there. They've also have built and are building a facility to hold these detainees. And during a matter-of-fact newscast, they showed at least one container, and I was kind of surprised when they said what they said. It's full of dead bodies.
Wow.
Now, they can't hold those very long. It gets stinking so bad they couldn't stand it.
Yeah, listen, Ron, I don't know all about that, but I do know we're headed in that direction no matter what. If things don't change at the border, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. And from what I see, everybody's kind of hitting their limit on what's happening there. This can't continue. It's unsustainable, and it has to stop. That's the best I could sum it up. Ron in Council Bluffs, Iowa, listening on KMA. Thank you, sir. Let us continue. Where do we go from here? We go to Sarah. Sarah's in Bedford, Indiana on WBIW. Sarah, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
End of the week. Good to talk to you. Hey,
Likewise.
I wanted to say, concerning that shooting in Kansas City, you do kind of wonder what's really going on. However, the media glorifies the whole thug lifestyle, and I'm going to tell you, a lot of these guys are abysmal marksmen as well as cowards. I seen a video one time of one gangbanger going after another, and the other started running and seen a little kid and tried to hide behind the little kid.
Oh, unbelievable. Sounds like Hamas.
It was all a YouTube thing. Oh, yeah. I mean, so in some horrible way, it is entirely possible. I mean, maybe there's more to the story why he fired in that crowd, but then given what I know growing up in New York, it's entirely possible. They're horrible marksmen, and they don't care in between them and their enemy,
I'm with you. I think there are a lot of people that are used to drive-by shootings. They're not spending time at the range. They don't have trigger discipline. They're just not marksmen, And I'm not saying that I am or that everyone should be, but I think everybody should practice and train as often as they can, so that it's familiar and it's not something that you're rusty at when you attempt to use your firearm for sport or self-protection or whatever else you use it for. However, what we're seeing in all different places is we've got people that are just tired, and they're sick and tired, and they're afraid, and they're seeing the landscape of our country change dramatically, and not because of different people per se, but because of different styles of living. Right? We have a president that's just lawless, bringing in lawless people that they're assimilating, right? We're saying, hey, we've got an open border. You don't have to apply for asylum. We can call you an asylum seeker. Just come on in. And we're kind of welcoming that type of behavior. And it's not good for America from any perspective. Just I can't think of any argument where that's a good idea. We need to do that. No, I don't think it's a good idea, and I definitely don't think we need to do it. But, Sarah, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Big shout-out to everybody in Indiana, WBIW. And we're going to come back with the rest of your calls and more. We have more calls that are in the queue. Looking forward to speaking with you. 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere, folks. It's Rich Valdez, Open Phone America, and we're coming right back.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. President, just a quick follow on the same theme of consequences. You said just now that you spoke to him a lot about human rights. What did you say would happen if opposition leader Alexei Navalny dies?
I made it clear to him that I believe the consequences of that would be devastating for Russia. I'll go back to the same point. What do you think happens when he's saying it's not about hurting Navalny, all the stuff he says to rationalize the treatment of Navalny? And then he dies in prison. I pointed out to him that it matters a great deal when a country, in fact, and they asked me why I thought it was important to continue to have problems with the president of Syria. I said because there's a violation of international norm. It's called the Chemical Weapons Treaty. It can't be trusted. It's about trust. It's about their ability to influence other nations in a positive way.
Of course, that was President Joe El Baboso Biden in Switzerland back in June of 2021. what a difference 3 years makes, because now President Biden at the White House today totally backtracking from the quote-unquote consequences that he laid out in 2021. Listen to what he says.
And to be clear, you warned Vladimir Putin when you were in Geneva of devastating consequences if Navalny died in Russian custody. What consequences should he and Russia face?
That was 3 years ago. In the meantime, they faced a hell of a lot of consequences. They've lost and or had wounded over 350,000 Russian soldiers. They've made in a position where they've been subjected to great sanctions across the board, and we're contemplating what else could be done. But what we were talking about at the time, there were no actions being taken against Russia. And look, all that's transpired since then.
What a difference 3 years makes, right? To that I say, Joe El Baboso Biden, you are a lying, dog-faced pony soldier. Amazing how you tried to be tough. If Navalny dies, I got a transcript right in front of me. It's not about hurting Navalny. You know, all this stuff he says to rationalize the treatment of Navalny. And then he dies in prison. I pointed out to him that it matters a great deal, right? I made it clear to him that I believe the consequences of that would be devastating for Russia. Of course, he says that they've already suffered so much at the hands of Ukraine. Then, why should we, even bother? Disgraceful. This only hurts everybody that serves in our military and makes everybody that lives in this country that much more at risk to being susceptible to the lies, the fakeness and the phoniness and the fraud of this administration. Just so sad. Honestly, it really, really is. Anyway, I want to get to your calls here. Let's go to Naperville, Illinois, and check in with Sherry. Sherry's calling us from Naperville, Illinois on the app, Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Sherry, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hi. It took me forever to find you on the internet and to live stream because I'm a very favorite Chicago WGN Raleigh James follower.
Nice.
But since it's a replay of Monday night, I decided to try to look you up because of the verdict on Trump, and your producer, aka such and such, said you talked about it. But
sure. What's on your mind, Sherry?
I think what's on my mind is I think it's been since he was previously convicted of fraudulent activity as in the civil court of New York, and I know and I feel, and it's in your gut, that he's been a liar. And when you talk about Trump organization, they used to talk about the Al Capone organization. And
well, I think it's very different. Al Capone was a bootlegger. Al Capone was a gangster. I mean, I'm sure at some point they were killing people. Donald Trump hasn't killed anybody. He's not selling alcohol illegally. The guy builds hotels, and he ran for president.
The point is they're trying to make profits off of suffering people.
Who's suffering? Who's suffering that goes to Trump Tower or to Mar-a-Lago?
Going to pay money, a bunch of money for stupid red hats and other marketed stuff.
Well, people are buying those items.
Pardon me?
The people with the red hats are buying those items. That's their money.
Yes, and they're spending their hard-earned money.
And you're saying that's wrong for them to spend their money the way they see fit?
Oh, yeah. It's either donate to a campaign that's not going to be used for his political falterings and personal falterings in court cases. I mean, they're all paying into the system. I mean, I had a wonderful teacher in high school. When we started Jefferson, he would bring the records from that era. He would wear the hat of their era.
And
James
what does he
Blah.
have to do with Trump?
He taught me history. He taught me knowledge. He taught me truth.
Right. But now, is Donald Trump a history teacher? I'm just not following the logic here.
For you to pander to lies blows
Well, what
my
are the
mind.
lies? What are the lies?
Name one you think I'm thinking of.
I'm not a mind reader, Sherry. I'm about to ask you what medication you're off of right now, but what are the lies you're talking about?
On or off of any medication. I am a logical thinking.
Well, you don't sound
statistical
logical.
person.
You're making claims and you can't back them up. You just said there were lies, and then you asked me to name the lies that you're thinking about. Why don't you just tell me the lies you're thinking about, and we can move on?
Civil courts statistically, and find Trump, which they already found him to be a liar and
Well, they didn't find him to be a liar. They said that he inflated the price of a property to get a loan. He then brought in evidence from the bank that lent him the money, saying that they didn't think that anything was inflated, but there was no jury. It went to a judge that was clearly biased and found against him. And I think there was no surprise that they were going to find against him. I think the big surprise was this big fine that you seem to be rejoicing about. But I can't imagine this being fair in anybody. Just because you don't like Trump doesn't mean that we should change the law to go after people we don't like, does it?
shut me off and you are, it doesn't matter what I like. I'm a Republican. This guy's an asshole. He used to be a Democrat.
Great. Well, Sherry, thank you for sharing your really, really intellectual and very deep thoughts on Donald Trump. This show will never be the same again. We are that much better for it. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Let us continue. We will go to Susan. Susan is in Gilbert, Arizona. Susan, what are your thoughts on Biden, Navalny, Trump, whatever? Go for it.
I believe I wanted to talk about Nikki Haley because I believe I heard her interview with one of the media, and she says she is still Democrat. And
yeah, well, Nikki Haley's never been a Democrat. As far as I know, she's always been a Republican. She might have some views that are in sync with Democrats right now, but as far as I know, she's not been a Democrat.
And she say, according to herself, her statement, she say they don't want her, and it's not because of her. So I believe she still is a Democrat. And then
well, again, I don't have any reason to believe that Nikki Haley's a Democrat. And if we could find some audio clips of her saying that she's a Democrat, that would be really interesting because she's running in a Republican primary. And she was a Republican governor, and she's been around for a number of years and served in a Republican administration. And as far as I know, she's always been a Republican. She just happens to be running against Trump right now. So I see why people would say she sounds like a Democrat, but she is a Republican. And I think the brand of Republican that she is one that is dissipating within the party. There's not much of them left. But Susan in Gilbert, Arizona, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. We've got plenty of action tonight on the phones. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, we continue with your calls all across America. Let's go down south, Louisville, Texas, KLIF, and check in with Don. Don, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome. Don, we can't hear you. Let's put Don on hold, and let's continue. Let's go to Leslie. She's in Ventura, California, KVTA. She was on before. Welcome back, Leslie. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi. I was on before, but I didn't get on the radio, so I came back, and I'm really glad to talk. I listened to the radio, and I found you, and I'm glad that I found you. I always feel that I agree with most of what you say, and I hope you won't get back at me like one caller that says, well, and it's like you've got a deep thinking but a shallow mind. So I hope that doesn't come across. Anyway.
So far, you're doing great, Leslie. Thank you for tuning in.
A friend told me that today, and he said he's a 90-year-old, and he said his mother told him that, and I thought it was kind of cute, so I thought I was good.
It was.
Anyway, I've only called once before on any radio show. So I've taught school for preschool, I've taught school for middle school, and I've taught adults. I have an education background, and and your caller, screener, Tom, he said something, oh, you're for homeschooling. I'll go, yeah, I'm for homeschooling, but that's not what I'm calling. I have 4 adult children, and 2 graduated from public high school in town, and the other graduated from another public school in town, and another graduated from a parochial Catholic school in town, and I tell people I would homeschool now, and not because I'm an educator, but because of what I feel is going on in most of the schools.
Would you say things are crazy right now?
Yeah, I think things are crazy in almost all schools.
I'm with you. And you know, it's refreshing to hear that because again, you know, I have some limited education experience as a board member, a school board member, but you know, you were in the classroom, and to hear, you know, someone like yourself that has experience being in the classroom, being around children, serving as an educator, and you know, in agreement with me from just casually observing what's going on, thinking it's absolutely nuts. I think that's a good thing for people to hear in Radio Land, that, you know, people should truly, strongly consider homeschooling or doing something other than sending their kids to the government school, Leslie.
Yeah. I'm on the radio right now.
Me too. Small world. So, Leslie, what was the bottom line? You think it's good to educate your kids yourself, and did you want to add something?
Yes, please. The bottom line was what you were talking about, $37,000 for childcare. Okay, I stopped 2 jobs. Two jobs I had, thinking I had these children to be their mother, and why am I letting a 16-year-old watch them? You know, and another one, I said, wait a minute, I'm taking care of all these other children, and that was also at a child care center at a school. You know, and I'm thinking, I'm the one that had the children, and what I didn't like, and I will say this to you, that almost using children as a commodity to make a bunch of money, like start a child education place to take care of children so you can make lots and lots of money. What I'm against that is that why not let the parent, you know, you have these children, even if you have a doctorate degree and you want to be a medical doctor, you are going to be a great doctor when you're 38 or 42. You can wait 4 years, 3 years, take care of your child. You can, when they are 6 months old, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, you can put them together with other parents, you know, and they can have a social life. But this is your child that you had that is made in the image and likeness of God, and you're going to give them to total strangers who might be good and caring, but they are not the parent. Now, I know some parents cannot be good parents.
Right. No, listen, Leslie, I think you hit the nail on the head. You're right. This is the way it must be, and I think what you're saying makes a ton of sense. Thank you for the call and for your kind words. Leslie in Ventura, California, KVTA, call back anytime, and love to hear from people from that part of the country. Coming back right now, Speed Round. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, we continue with your calls in the speed round. Let's go to Judy calling from Cornelia, Georgia, WDUN. What's your thought on Trump, Judy?
I just want to defend him for a man that don't have to put himself through what he is going through. Has to be a very strong man. And I hope that all this stuff, the situation that's going on in Atlanta, I hope that turns around and bites them in the butt. As
Me
well
too.
as all that happening in New York, the same thing. I hope it comes.
I agree. I think the case in New York is ugly, and hopefully that they can put that on appeal and resolve it that way. The case in Atlanta, I mean, it's just remarkable that you've got Funny Willis and all this funny business that's going on. We talked about that at length yesterday, and we'll discuss it again with our recap over the weekend. But I think you're right, Judy. Thank you for your call. Some people are just falling apart at the seams, honestly. Janet in Rhodes, Missouri, KRMS. Janet, what is your thought on Trump and the banks?
How can they say that he inflated the price for the loan when banks do appraisals? And they determine how much the loan for lending. I have never heard of
Me
such.
neither. I've never heard of such a thing.
You know yourself.
You're 100% right. The bank determines the value. They lend the money. They got the money back. Where's the crime? There's no crime here. I heard Alan Dershowitz, a Democrat, liberal Democrat from Harvard, talking about this earlier, saying there was no crime here. This is something that he'd never seen in his 50 years of practicing law. Never seen anything like this. And I agree. This is the persecution of Trump. I mean, obviously, he doesn't do himself any favors because he's a bombastic and big figure. But that doesn't matter to me, right? Ultimately, we don't change our laws because we don't like somebody's style or delivery or, personality. It doesn't work that way. Anyway, we got more calls than we have time, so I'm going to give a quick shout-out to everybody. Joe in Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. He says Biden is wrong on Navalny. I agree. He should have offered condolences. Jane agrees with that. Saratoga, New York, WGDJ. Paul in Zanesville says Democrats are scared. I think you're right. We had one calling before. She was trying to rip my head off, saying all these crazy things about Trump. And Bill in Jefferson City, our resident historian, says that there is a commemoration for B-17 crew members tomorrow. Well, Godspeed to them and thank them for their service. David in Bowling Green, Kentucky, WKCT. Charge the suspects in Kansas City as adults. I agree. Joe in Arkansas, big shout out to you. I'll be back on Monday. God bless.